Welcome, everyone, to the Meaningful Hearts Podcast, where we discuss the everyday questions that make us or break us if we let them. With your hosts, Drew and Daniela. Take our hands and let's walk this journey together.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Meaningful Hearts Podcast. Today, we're going to talk about food.
Yes, but not like a cooking show or recipes or our favorite things that we like to eat. Well, necessarily our favorite things, but what goes into, I guess, the selection of what we're eating and how we feel about it. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think so. I think this came off of a recent experience that we had with like when we went out to eat. We went to have sushi, and Andrew and I love sushi, and we have a very particular place that we love to go to. But this particular time, it just wasn't what we usually experience. And out of those moments, it made me think about, what is it that ends up being too much? Like, at what point is something too much? At what point do we need a change? So I think it's a good topic of conversation.
Yeah. And I guess also, actually, what comes to mind is the fact of, is it maybe when you fall out of love with something you really thought you'd have around in your life forever as far as food's concerned? Your tastes ever just change, or maybe you just notice something about the food you're eating that you just don't necessarily like it anymore? And I'm wondering if that's a pivotal point too in what we're experiencing.
I don't know about that, because we've had moments before where we've taken a break from eating sushi for the same reason. I don't necessarily know if I've fallen out of love with sushi, but it was definitely the experience that we had that I was like, oh, this is a lot. I've had a sushi quite a bit recently, and I think I need to take a step back and do something different.
Because I know that for me, there are foods that I don't necessarily eat anymore, or when I do, I'm like, I don't know about that. One particular thing I think is steak. As of recent, even though steak is very good, in my most recent experiences, I get it, and I'm like, I didn't really enjoy that. Not because it was bad, but I don't know. It's not from. I don't necessarily say that it's a profile of food that I thoroughly enjoy as much anymore. If that makes any sense. So that's why I'm saying it. And brings up sushi to my mind, where I kind of had that moment. Maybe that's me. Maybe that's just a thing that once I'm kind of done with something, I'm kind of done with it, or for a long time until I rediscover it again. And I'm like, oh, I missed this. This was good. Yeah.
I mean, like I said, that happened to us with sushi. I think like the last year, there's a time where we were all sushied out and we weren't getting sushi for a while.
But I think this time was different for me, because it wasn't like being sushied out. I just think there was some texture playing into it, and I think it was taste. And not to say that that's going to be every experience going forward, but it kind of brushes you back a little bit. It's like, I don't want to have this experience by chance again. So I don't know. Yeah, I guess it's a little more intense for me.
Yeah, it reminded me of the time I got sick. I had a stomach virus after having had turkey meatballs. Oh. And I literally have not had turkey meatballs since then. And that was sometime last year.
That happened to me throughout my life. Right before the next morning I had the stomach virus. It was after a holiday. I remember eating brownies, and when you're sick, you think of the last thing you consumed and I just had brownies came to my mind, and I could not eat brownies for a long time. Meatballs too for Italian meatballs. I could not eat them for a very long time. It took a lot. I was like apprehensive to even give them a shot again after, like, we're talking about a year maybe. And then I was like, oh, it works again. But yeah, it's interesting how psychologically we could attach the pain and the feeling and the thought and the taste to all those things, and it could just. I wonder if we could do that on command. It's like, hey, you know what? I'm trying to stay away from cheeseburgers and ice cream. Let's just input bad experience there. Now I don't want it anymore.
Well, it's the association, right? I think it actually reminds me of one of the Tony Robbins events that we did, where the guy was talking about not wanting to, I think, eat any more pizza because pizza was unhealthy, and then Tony Robbins just started stacking all of this like raw, disgusting meat on top of the pizza, and it eventually, got to a point where the man was like, I don't even want this anymore. So that's what that reminded me of, what you were sharing.
I think, though, that's more like a synthetic, or I don't know how you want to call it, like, I guess a made up experience versus having one firsthand that can really dive into and feel. I would say that would help, obviously, if you can put that in your mind, but a firsthand encounter just does it. I guess it's effortless, right? It's effortless once we experience something like that.
It sounds more like intentional versus unintentional, because his process was intentional, and in the things that we've experienced is unintentional, like you with the brownies or me with the turkey meatballs. These things are unintentional as they happen, and yet they leave such a profound effect on us, which is part of the reason why I wanted to have this conversation, because I know that we're talking about food, but the reality is that so many of us want the same things all the time. We want to feel safe. We want to feel comfort in our routines and our sense of normalcy. But at the end of the day, as human beings, we need change. We need different things.
Yeah, I agree. I think we need variety in our lives, and sometimes I guess we get stuck in this endless loop of routine, especially if it's something that we really, really enjoy and that we tend to, it's our go-to, but sometimes we overdo it. And when we overdo it, our body says, hey, I need a break from this. And that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I think doing different things, no matter how uncomfortable they are, they do help us grow. I mean, I know, again, we're talking about food, but even with, being a little sushi'd out now, does that suck? Yeah, a little bit, because I love sushi. But that also gives me an opportunity to explore other types of food, and there are so many people who grow up on a very particular diet. And I think it is a shame, because the world has literally such incredible food to offer. And if you are somebody that has a very particular diet, you grew up being very picky, it might be helpful to challenge yourself to try new things and try different things, because that's how you will not only expand your taste palettes, but also expand your mind. It'll naturally help you increase your mental flexibility, which I think is, again, it's funny that something as simple as like talking about food can really relate on a much bigger scale.
It's funny you say that, like, some people have very limited diets on what they can eat, not because of an allergy, but more based on preference or how they were raised, or may have not been raised, or maybe they just became very picky. Yesterday I was watching the show The Bear, which is about a restaurant, and like they talk about they show fine dining, and they're preparing things. They have like tweezers to put like the food very specific, and it's a whole experience, right? It's fine dining, French cuisine, whatever. And my cousin's like, oh, I could, he's very picky. He's a pain in the ass, but he's like, listen, I like to go to nice places, but I couldn't see myself eating that. Like, that would just be ridiculous. Like, and there's such small portions, and being that I'm so picky with everything, like I would say, I don't want this, I don't want that, I don't want this, I don't want that. And And I was like, but that's the whole experience. There are flavor profiles that maybe you haven't tried, or it's an experience that you might possibly have. People don't go there like they're going to chow down on a cheeseburger and fries. It's more like you're fine tuning your palates to taste specific things with the finest ingredients and in a very intentional way, almost like tasting art. But it was just funny you brought that up, because my cousin is so like, he's so picky that he's a creature of habit, to the point where he won't try anything any other way until the one moment he does, and then it becomes part of his routine, and that's all he'll have it that way for a very, 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 very long time, until he tires it out, and then he goes back to his other routine.
Yeah, we can predict. Well, you can predict really well what he's going to be having for dinner, and sometimes he changes it up. Though I will say that let's give him some credit. He does change it up from time to time.
No, like, but they're the same thing. So if he's going to cook, he's either going to make his cordon bleu, which is in the freezer. He's going to make pierogies, right? Or he's going to get. He goes like his London broil with pierogies or mac and cheese, and then there's making chicken, which is the chicken thighs and legs with a little bit of adobo, and he's gonna have that with pierogies or mac and cheese.
People like what they like, which in a lot of ways, I know we're cutting ass a little bit, but it is ultimately a reflection of mental flexibility, in my opinion. I think that it's great to be able to know what is safe and what is good for you, but at the same time, some of the most impactful experiences I've had in my life have been because I've made a decision to do something different. Yes. And again, we are talking about food, but in the grand scheme of things, we're talking about just we need change. Even for myself recently, I changed the days that I work from home. I usually work from home on Tuesdays, and now I changed it to work from home on Mondays. And the office that I am now going into is different than the one I'm usually in. And it is a very different office. My office now it's pretty spacious. It has a window, and I've grown really accustomed to it. And I'll change things in it from time to time, which Andrew will vouch for this. I love rearranging my furniture for some reason, not just in my office, but also at home. I've rearranged
anywhere she can.
I feel like it goes with seasons. Like I will rearrange it. I'll leave it for a while. But in any case, it was a pretty big change from going to a spacious room with a really big window to a very small room with no window and no overhead light. I had to get like a lamp and like all of this stuff. But I realized as I was doing it, it was something that I was excited for because I also get to see more of my colleagues, but also really uncomfortable with because it didn't feel like my space. But in challenging myself to do that, at the end of the night, one of the best things was that office happens to be right by the water. I got to go on a walk down like the dock, and it was pretty fantastic experience. And I'm like, wow, this is exactly what I needed. And I wouldn't have been able to get to that point if I didn't make the decision to do something different. So whether it's trying a new food or whether it's expanding your palate or maybe limiting yourself to that food that you get so often, to more big changes, or not more big, just bigger changes or different changes, it can really affect your perspective and your outlook on life. At least if you go into it with that mindset. If you're going into trying something new and you're like, oh my God, I'm going to hate this. This is not what I'm used to. Then you're obviously going to hate the experience.
Yes. I think that sometimes I've been forced to make a change, right? There's no choice in the matter. I think that one that most people could understand because it just happened recently and it was forceful was the pandemic, right? People literally changed their trajectory of their lives and went off course. And having this happen to them was a fork in the road that they never expected, and it forced them to make a change in their lives, their careers in different places. And some people have thrived off of being put in another direction. And we're talking about people that were going to be in their careers for the next 20 years. And that's what they were going to be doing in 20 years. And had like an epiphany. It's like, oh, wait, there's a roadblock right now. I can't go back or over it. I need to go to like left or right and completely change. Some people lost the industries they were in, were completely disrupted, where they had to go in another direction, and they're better off from it. And I'm sure they could look back and say, damn, if it wasn't for that, I'd still be in the same position I was in going in that direction. And like how much different my life would be, and just having that perspective after the fact. But you need to take that leap forward. You need to taste something different to understand the perspective, to understand the contrast between the two. And in my life as well, I've looked back at where I was and where I am, and relationships, everything. It just, if you never changed course, you wouldn't know what better is. And I think that it's something that you need to do. You know, I'm not saying you do it often, but if something in your life is lacking, or maybe you're just wondering, taste, go out there and see what else is out there. That makes any sense.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. I was thinking about what questions to leave people with. I think one of them is, I guess, just on a very basic level, what kind of foods do you eat on a weekly basis and what that's like? Are you open to trying new things? Do you have the same things every day? What does that look like? And how is that a reflection of the bigger picture of your life? I would say those are the two big questions to leave people with, at least from my end.
I eat chicken breast chopped up in an air fryer almost
literally
every morning.
Every day.
Yeah. And I eat it literally like it's popcorn, like going to work. That's what I do. Trying to get the protein in, the gains. So Danielle is like, ugh.
Chicken.
It's not, honestly though, it's not so bad. It's really not. It's doable. I thought it wouldn't be, but it's very doable.
Well, the good thing is that the air fryer, by the way, if anybody out there does not have an air fryer and can afford one and has a space for it, definitely recommend one. Air fryers are great to have.
Yes, they are. They're awesome. They kick ass.
But I think it's because it's done in the air fryer, the chicken isn't as dry as it might get when you make it in the oven or when you make it on the pan. And I think that's why it's not as hard for you. Personally, for me, that's a lot of freaking chicken.
Yeah. It's crispy goodness, I guess.
Yeah.
I did have that today. First meal.
Oh, geez. In any case, that's what we will leave you with. We thank you all for listening, and we will catch you on the next one.